Welcome to the debate. Before we jump into today's topic, just a quick reminder for everyone tuning in here on NFL Nexus. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment down below with what you thought. Also, if you want exclusive content, hit that join button to become a channel member.
Yeah, hit that join button. It really helps us out.
Absolutely. So imagine paying a guy $141 million to catch a football, only to realize that the guy standing right behind your quarterback, in the backfield, can do it just as well for minimum wage.
It's wild when you frame it like that.
It really is. We are unpacking the, frankly, explosive inflation of the NFL wide receiver market today, and we're analyzing a resulting roster construction theory that is really dividing front offices right now.
Right. So the core question on the table today is basically, is reallocating your top-tier financial resources from wide receivers over to versatile pass-catching running backs a brilliant market correction, or is it just a fundamentally flawed approach to positional value?
Exactly. And I argue that paying these elite, versatile running backs is a necessary, highly efficient market correction against what I see as an absurdly inflated wide receiver bubble.
And, well, I argue that this strategy relies entirely on generational outliers. And more importantly, I think it deeply misunderstands the inherent structural value that wide receivers provide to a modern offensive ecosystem.
Well, let's dive straight into the current economic reality then. Because from my perspective, the wide receiver market has just detached from reality. It has become completely economically irrational.
Yeah, the numbers are getting huge.
Huge is an understatement. In any fixed salary cap league, efficiency is the singular name of the game, right? If you look at the cap sheets around the league this offseason, the numbers are just staggering. We saw Jackson Smith-Jigba sign a 4-year, $168.6 million extension.
Sure, but I mean, he has the pedigree.
Oh, I will readily concede that. He was the 2025 Offensive Player of the Year. He just helped the Seahawks win a Super Bowl. He is the absolute ceiling of the position. You pay your superstars.
Right, you have to pay the top guys.
But the problem is that this rising financial tide is lifting boats that have massive holes in them.
Ah, so you're talking about the middle class of the position getting superstar money.
Exactly. Look at what the Indianapolis Colts just did. They signed Alec Pierce to a 4-year, $114 million deal.
Yeah, that one definitely made waves.
Pierce has surpassed 1,000 receiving yards exactly once in his first 4 seasons. That is the definition of an overpay driven by market panic.
Well, general managers are terrified of losing their outside weapons.
Right, so they are throwing $100 million at secondary targets. Meanwhile, executives around the league are quietly suggesting that paying an elite pass-catching running back, say $17 to $18 million a year, provides a 2-for-1 value.
A 2-for-1?
Yeah, you get a dominant rushing attack and elite receiving production for a fraction of the cost. I believe NFL teams must exploit this exact market inefficiency. You let the average wide receivers walk, you pay the elite running back, and you build a more robust roster with the savings.
I understand the sticker shock. I really do. When you see a guy with one 1,000-yard season ink a 9-figure deal, it feels broken. But treating elite running backs as a one-to-one financial replacement for wide receivers is a dangerous fallacy.
How is it a fallacy if the production is there?
Well, I will certainly acknowledge that wide receiver contracts are staggeringly high right now, but we have to understand the mechanics of why that is happening. They're high because of positional scarcity and the structural necessity of the position.
Sure, the passing game is everything.
Exactly. The passing game dictates the terms of engagement in professional football today. You are suggesting that front offices build a roster model around players like Christian McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson to save money.
Because it works.
But the massive flaw in that logic is that McCaffrey and Robinson are generational anomalies. They are unicorns. Building a scalable blueprint for 32 NFL franchises around the existence of unicorns is how general managers get fired.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on how we evaluate those so-called unicorns, because I really don't believe they're as rare as they used to be.
You think we're going to see a dozen of them?
I mean, the college game is actively churning out these dual-threat weapons. But beyond that, it comes down to the raw production-to-cost ratio. If we analyze the statistical realities of Christian McCaffrey, the market inefficiency becomes glaringly obvious. Let's look at the data from last season.
Okay, let's look at it.
McCaffrey lobbed 1,202 rushing yards, which placed him 8th in the NFL. But the rushing is just a bonus for this specific conversation. In the passing game, he had 924 receiving yards. That placed him 23rd in the entire league in receiving. He quite literally outproduced Brandon Ayuk in the passing game, a primary wide receiver on his own team.
But you have to look at the context of...
Wait, let me just finish the financial thought, because this is the crux of the argument. Despite McCaffrey outproducing Ayuk in receiving, look at the financial commitments the franchise made. Ayuk received a 4-year, $120 million deal. Meanwhile, McCaffrey's 2-year extension that kicks in for the 2026 season is only for $38 million.
Right.
How can any rational team builder justify paying $120 million to a receiver who is outproduced in his own specific statistical category by a running back making a fraction of the cost? You get the rushing yards for free, essentially.
I come at it from a different way, because we cannot look at those numbers in a vacuum without context. Yes, McCaffrey's production is phenomenal, and his contract is team-friendly by comparison. But we have to look at the mechanics of why Brandon Ayuk's contract appears so mismatched right now. First, there's the localized context.
The injury, right?
Exactly. Ayuk suffered a right knee injury in October 2024. Following that, the relationship soured, he distanced himself from the team, and he is now actively petitioning for a move to the Commanders.
Right, it got messy.
His contract looks foolish to the 49ers in hindsight because of an unpredictable injury and the resulting off-field fracture. Hindsight contract analysis is incredibly easy. If Ayuk hadn't shredded his knee, based on his trajectory, he likely would have surpassed McCaffrey's receiving numbers by a wide margin. You are using a localized, unpredictable event to justify a sweeping change to forward-looking roster building.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. Even if we completely remove Ayuk's injury from the equation and assume he played all 17 games, the core discrepancy in the financial commitment remains massive. And it is not just a San Francisco phenomenon. This is happening across the league. Let's pivot and look at a perfectly healthy duo.
Okay, who did you have in mind?
The Atlanta Falcons. This illustrates the cost discrepancy argument without the injury caveat. Bijan Robinson produced 1,478 rushing yards, which was 4th in the NFL, and 820 receiving yards in 17 games.
Phenomenal season.
Right? He is currently making just $1.145 million in base salary on his rookie deal. Even if we project ahead to his second contract, current market estimates suggest his value is a 3-year deal worth around $18.9 million annually. Meanwhile, his teammate, Drake London, just received a 4-year, $141 million extension.
Well, London is a foundational piece of that offense.
But look at what the Falcons actually got for that $141 million. London had exactly 99 more receiving yards than Robinson last season. 99 yards. And by the way, London had 0 All-Pro or Pro Bowl nods in his first 4 years.
Yeah, but
We are talking about $18.9 million for a first-team All-Pro utility weapon versus $141 million for a receiver who barely outproduced him in the passing game. It's just terrible resource allocation.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. That raw statistical comparison fundamentally misunderstands how offensive geometry works in the National Football League. You are looking at a stat sheet, seeing 2 columns of receiving yards, and assuming they were generated in isolation.
They're catching passes in the same offense.
Right, but they were not generated in isolation. Robinson's 820 receiving yards are, in large part, a direct byproduct of the defensive spacing created by receivers exactly like Drake London.
How so? Explain the mechanism there, because 820 yards is a massive number to attribute just to spacing.
I know anyone listening to this who plays fantasy football is screaming right now. They are looking at Bijan Robinson's or Christian McCaffrey's fantasy points and thinking, you know, these guys are the ultimate offensive weapons. They touch the ball 25 times a game.
Because they are.
But fantasy points don't measure structural gravity. Fantasy football rewards the final touch of the football. It doesn't reward the player who manipulated the defense to make that touch possible. Let's break down the actual geometry of a play.
Okay, break it down.
When Drake London lines up on the outside and runs a deep post route or a vertical go route, he physically forces the defense to react. If the defense is in cover 2 or cover 4, the safeties have to backpedal rapidly.
Sure, they have to respect the deep ball.
Right. And if they are in man coverage, they have to dedicate their best cover cornerback to the boundary and shade a safety over the top.
Right, he stretches the field defensively.
Exactly. But think of it like a military operation. The wide receiver is your high-powered sniper. You deploy the sniper to push the enemy lines back and create a zone of fear.
I like that analogy.
When London pushes those defensive backs 20 yards downfield, he acts like a snowplow, completely clearing out the middle of the field and the underneath flats. He creates a massive void of empty turf. And who operates in that empty turf?
The infantry, the running back.
Yes, Bijan Robinson gets to catch a simple 5-yard angle route or a flare to the flat with 0 linebackers within a 10-yard radius of him. You cannot simply subtract the expensive wide receiver, replace him with a cheap, average player, and expect the running back to maintain that same efficiency. If you remove the $141 million sniper, the defense stops retreating. The linebackers step up, the safeties creep into the box, the snowplow effect disappears, and suddenly your elite pass-catching running back is catching the ball with 2 defenders draped over his back.
I completely understand the offensive geometry you're describing, and the sniper metaphor is brilliant. But I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning when it comes to roster construction, because you were assuming that the only way to create that defensive spacing is by paying a single receiver $141 million.
It's the most reliable way.
But if the sniper costs 20% of your entire military budget and only takes 3 shots a game, you can't afford the infantry. It's an inefficient way to wage the war. This is where the draft or replacement strategy comes into play, which is the core arbitrage opportunity front offices are eyeing right now.
But drafting a replacement is incredibly risky.
Football is risky, but the financial risk is asymmetrical. The strategic solution is to actively avoid these massive Tier 1 and Tier 2 wide receiver payouts. You let a player like Drake London or Alec Pierce walk in free agency.
And just lose that production?
You take that $30+ million a year in salary cap space, and you invest $18.9 million of it into securing that game-changing pass-catching running back. What do you do with the rest? You draft a wide receiver in the 1st or 2nd round on a cost-controlled rookie contract to replace the veteran.
Okay, but
You still have a fast, talented receiver running those deep vertical routes to act as the snowplow. You maintain the spacing through offensive scheme and young, cheap speed, but you allocate your capital much more efficiently.
if they pan out.
Right, but the NFL pay structure is partially determined by historical prestige. Wide receivers have historically been the divas, the stars, the ones who get paid. Smart teams should work within that flawed historical system and exploit it. A dual-threat running back gives you a 2-for-1 deal, allowing you to stay under the cap and maintain a complete roster.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered the incredibly high variance and failure rate of draft picks?
Well, sure, there's variance.
You are describing a theoretical arbitrage opportunity that relies on hitting a bullseye in the draft every 3 to 4 years. You're talking about drafting a rookie as if you can just walk into a big box store and pull a guaranteed 1,000-yard receiver off the shelf.
It's not guaranteed, but
Let's dig into the paradox of that exact argument. The premise is that we should avoid paying top-tier wide receivers because it's too expensive, but then the entire success of the running back, the guy you just gave $18.9 million to, relies on an unproven rookie immediately replacing the gravitational pull of a seasoned veteran.
Rookie receivers are producing faster than ever, though. Look at what Jackson Smith-Njigba did, or Jamar Chase a few years ago.
Some of them do, yes, but let's look at the mechanics of what happens when they don't. When a rookie wide receiver steps onto an NFL field, the first thing defensive coordinators do is test them with press man coverage.
Right. Welcome to the league.
Exactly. They put a 200-pound cornerback right in their face at the line of scrimmage to jam them. A veteran like Drake London knows the hand-fighting techniques and the footwork to beat the jam, get into his route, and force the safeties to back up. A rookie often gets completely washed out of the play.
Yeah, they can get bullied early on.
And if that rookie busts, or even if it just takes him 2 full seasons to figure out how to beat press coverage, your entire offensive ecosystem collapses. Because that rookie isn't acting as a snowplow anymore, he's stuck at the line of scrimmage. That means the safeties don't retreat, the linebackers don't drop deep, they stack the box, the passing lanes underneath vanish. Suddenly, your highly paid running back is facing loaded defensive fronts on every single snap, and his efficiency plummets.
But isn't the risk of a draft pick busting significantly less catastrophic than the risk of tying up 15 to 20% of your salary cap in an underperforming veteran wide receiver?
That's debatable.
I mean, I will absolutely concede that the NFL's positional pay structure is inherently flawed. We can both look at the film and see that players like Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson, who are out there generating over 2,000 yards from scrimmage and physically carrying offenses on their backs, absolutely should be making more money based on their pure output.
Oh, 100%.
We agree on the injustice of the pay scale. But until the league's financial structure corrects itself natively, front offices have to operate in the reality of the salary cap. I just don't see how paying Alec Pierce $114 million is less risky than drafting a first-round receiver and paying Bijan Robinson $18.9 million. Yes, the draft has variance. A rookie might struggle against press man coverage for a year.
Or completely wash out.
Sure, but dead cap space from a terrible veteran contract guarantees failure. If you pay a receiver $141 million and he regresses, or he loses a step of speed, your franchise is financially paralyzed for 3 to 4 years. You can't sign free agents, you can't retain your offensive line, you are trapped.
I completely agree that the current pay structure is flawed. It is highly problematic that a player like Robinson, a 2025 first-team All-Pro, who can run inside zones and catch Texas routes out of the backfield, is making a base salary of barely over $1 million, while a receiver without a single Pro Bowl nod is resetting the market.
It's wild.
The economics are entirely disjointed, and the labor market hasn't caught up to the value of versatile backs. Where we fundamentally disagree, however, is on the prescription for this illness. You see this statistical anomaly as a loophole that front offices should actively exploit. I see it as a roster-building trap.
A trap because you don't trust the draft replacement?
A trap because you are messing with the foundation of the house to save money on the roof.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. If you refuse to pay the market rate for a proven veteran wide receiver, you are playing Russian roulette with your quarterback's development and the integrity of your offensive scheme. The structural impact of a true X receiver, their ability to consistently win on the outside against man coverage on 3rd and 7 when everyone in the stadium knows you have to pass, is the bedrock of the modern passing game. Without that bedrock, everything else crumbles. An outlier running back is a fantastic, highly efficient complementary piece, but they are not the foundation. You cannot ask the infantry to do the sniper's job.
Let's summarize where we've landed on this because it highlights a fascinating ongoing tension in modern sports economics. My stance remains that the wide receiver market has completely detached from its actual on-field value. When a secondary player who barely crests 1,000 yards is commanding over $100 million, the market is broken. Yeah, it's rough out there.
Therefore, exploiting this inflation by securing elite 2-for-1 dual-threat running backs is the most efficient use of a team's limited salary cap space. It mitigates the crippling financial risk of dead cap space while maintaining high-end offensive production through schematic spacing and rookie talent.
And my stance is that while wide receiver contracts are undeniably bloated right now, attempting to replace their structural, schematic impact with outlier running backs and unproven draft picks is a profound miscalculation of how modern NFL offenses operate. You simply cannot mathematically replace the defensive attention and the physical spacing that a true veteran wide receiver demands. Trying to shortcut that process will only lead to a congested, claustrophobic offense.
We do have a very clear point of convergence here, though. We both recognize that the current financial bubble surrounding wide receivers, typified by those massive deals for middle-tier guys like Alec Pierce and the severe hindsight issues with Brandon Ayuk's contract, is highly problematic for the long-term health of a team's salary cap sheet.
Yes, we entirely agree on the diagnosis of the economic illness. The market is overheated. The continued disagreement lies purely in the cure. Is pivoting capital to the running back position a viable, repeatable solution that outsmarts the market, or is it a schematic trap that will leave an offense entirely predictable and easy to defend?
Which reflects exactly why it is so valuable to examine the raw economics of roster construction from multiple perspectives. Numbers on a spreadsheet look very different when you map them onto the turf and factor in human elements like press man coverage and defensive adjustments. As the 2026 season approaches, observing how these specific contracts age, how the Falcons perform with London's massive new deal
versus Robinson's highly efficient rookie contract will provide incredible real-world insights into the validity of this entire debate.
Absolutely. We are essentially watching a multi-million-dollar real-time economic experiment play out on Sundays. It is going to test every theory of positional value we have.
So we circle back to the core tension. If you're managing a front office and the market is demanding a premium for an asset that might not guarantee a return, you have a hard choice to make. Do you pay the inflated premium because it is the only structural way to stay competitive on the field, or do you find a completely different method to attack the defense? We will let you, the listener, decide which roster-building philosophy you'd rather stake your franchise on.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us here on NFL Nexus. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and we'll see you next time.